Hi everyone, welcome. If you are here tonight, you are probably looking for something quiet, something slow, something that can gently carry your mind somewhere peaceful while your body begins to rest. And that is exactly what this is. Tonight, we are going to talk about mountains, not in a rushed or exciting way, just slowly, gently, the way you might sit by a window on a rainy evening and watch the world outside, without needing anything at all. Mountains have always been there, in the background of human life. Tall, quiet, patient. They don't hurry. They don't need to. And as we spend this time together, we will begin to understand very slowly, very softly, where mountains come from, how the earth, in its own unhurried way, builds them over millions and millions of years. There is no test tonight. There is nothing to remember. You can simply listen. Let the words pass through you like a soft breeze. If your eyes grow heavy, that is perfectly fine. That is perhaps exactly what should happen. We will move through 120 gentle facts tonight, each one a small, quiet window into the slow and beautiful world of mountains. Some of them will surprise you in a quiet way. Some will feel familiar. All of them are simply true, little truths about the earth we live on. So let yourself settle. Let your shoulders drop. Let your breathing slow just a little. And let's begin. Part 1. The earth beneath us. The ground beneath your feet, no matter where you're standing right now, is not still. It never truly has been. The surface of the earth is made up of enormous pieces of rock called tectonic plates, and these plates are always moving, just incredibly, peacefully, slowly. Most of them move at about the same speed that your fingernails grow, roughly a few centimeters every year. You would never notice it in a single lifetime. But over millions of years, that quiet, patient movement adds up to something extraordinary. It builds oceans. It closes them again. It pushes whole continents apart, and then sometimes draws them gently back together. And when two of these great plates meet and press against each other, something begins to rise. Something begins to form. The ground itself begins to fold upward. And that is where mountains begin. The Earth's outer shell, the part we live on and walk across every day, is called the lithosphere. It is not one solid piece, like the shell of a hard-boiled egg. Instead, it is broken into about 15 or so large pieces, and several smaller ones. These pieces fit together like a very slow, very ancient puzzle. The largest of these plates are enormous, some covering entire ocean floors, others carrying whole continents on their backs. Beneath this shell, the rock is not quite solid. It is hot enough and under enough pressure that it behaves almost like a very, very thick liquid, moving and flowing over very long periods of time. And it is this slow flow of the material beneath that carries the plates along, like enormous rafts drifting across a sea of almost melted rock, so slowly, so gently, that no single human life would ever feel it move. The theory that explains how the Earth's plates move is called plate tectonics, and it is one of the most important ideas in all of science. Strangely, it is a fairly recent idea. Scientists only began to widely accept it in the 1960s. Before that, most people assumed the continents had always been where they are now. But the evidence slowly, quietly accumulated. The shapes of the continents seemed to fit together like puzzle pieces. Rocks on opposite sides of oceans were found to be the same age and type. Fossils of the same creatures appeared on continents separated by thousands of miles of ocean. Slowly, the picture became clear. The Earth's surface has been rearranging itself for billions of years, carrying mountains and oceans along with it, building and eroding, rising and falling, in a cycle so vast and so gentle that it is almost like breathing. If you could watch the Earth's history sped up, like a time-lapse film of the entire planet over hundreds of millions of years, you would see the continents drifting and colliding and separating in a slow, graceful dance. About 300 million years ago, all of Earth's major landmasses were joined into one enormous supercontinent called Pangaea. It looked nothing like our world today. Then, over millions of years, Pangaea began to break apart. The pieces drifted away from each other, slowly, across the surface of the globe. Some pieces became the continents we know today: North America, South America, Africa, Europe, Asia, Australia, and Antarctica. They're still moving. They're moving right now, tonight, while you rest. And where some of them are pushing against each other, mountains are still very quietly being made. There is a place on Earth where two enormous tectonic plates are colliding right now, as they have been for about 50 million years. It is where the Indian subcontinent is pressing, very slowly and very steadily, into the rest of Asia. And the result of that long, patient collision is the Himalayas, the tallest mountain range on Earth. The Himalayas are still growing. Every year, they rise by a few millimeters. It is not something you could see or feel. But the mountain is reaching, quietly and patiently, a little higher into the sky. Mount Everest, the tallest peak, sits at about 8,849 meters above sea level. And it is, right now, tonight, just a tiny fraction of a millimeter taller than it was when you woke up this morning. Growing. Slowly. Gently. Mountains are not just found on land. The ocean floor is home to some of the longest and tallest mountain ranges on Earth. And most of them are almost entirely unknown to everyday human experience. The mid-ocean ridge, for example, is a mountain range that winds across the bottom of the world's oceans for about 65,000 kilometers. That is longer than any mountain range on dry land. Longer than all the continent's mountain ranges combined. It runs through the Atlantic Ocean, the Indian Ocean, and the Pacific Ocean, all connected in one vast, quiet underwater ridge. Where plates are slowly pulling apart, lava wells up and builds new rock, adding to the ridge year by year. It is a place of constant, very slow creation. Hidden beneath miles of dark, cold ocean water, building mountains that almost no one will ever see. There is something deeply peaceful about the idea that rock itself is not permanent. Even the hardest stone, granite, basalt, quartzite, changes over time. Given enough time and enough pressure and heat, almost any rock can transform into something different. Geologists have a word for the three main types of rock: igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic. Igneous rocks are formed from cooled magma. Sedimentary rocks are formed from layers of material that accumulated and pressed together over time. And metamorphic rocks are formed when existing rocks are changed by heat and pressure deep underground. Mountains contain all three types, and every mountain tells a story in its layers. A slow, quiet story written over millions of years in the language of stone. The inside of the earth is divided into layers, like a very large onion. At the very center is the inner core, a solid ball of iron and nickel, roughly the size of the moon, sitting at temperatures of up to about 5,000 degrees Celsius. Around that is the outer core, which is liquid. Then comes the mantle, a thick layer of rock that makes up most of Earth's volume. And finally, the thin outer layer we live on, the crust. The crust is thinner, relative to the whole Earth, than the skin of an apple. And yet it is on this impossibly thin shell that all life exists, all mountains rise, all oceans rest. It is a reminder of how delicate and how extraordinary the surface of our planet truly is. And all of it, every mountain, every valley, floats on that deeper, hotter world beneath. The mantle of the Earth, the thick layer of rock between the crust and the outer core, is not quite liquid and not quite solid. It behaves in a way that depends on how quickly you apply force to it. Hit it quickly, and it behaves like a solid. It can break. But apply very slow, steady pressure over millions of years, and it flows. This kind of material is called a viscous solid. Imagine a very stiff, very thick caramel. Over time, it will slowly spread and flow under its own weight. The mantle moves in slow, circular currents called convection cells, where hotter rock rises, spreads out near the top, cools, and then sinks again. It is these slow circular movements that help drive the tectonic plates above. The engine of mountain building quietly churning beneath us day after day, year after year. There is a concept in geology called isostasy, and it is a rather beautiful idea. It describes how the crust of the Earth floats on the denser mantle beneath it, much the way an iceberg floats on water. When a mountain range is built up, when rock is piled higher and higher over millions of years, the crust beneath it sinks a little, pushing down into the mantle. And when a mountain erodes, when wind and rain and ice slowly wear it away, the crust beneath it rises, floating a little higher. Mountains are in a kind of balance with the earth beneath them. As rock is removed from the top, more rock rises from below. It is a very slow, very gentle kind of equilibrium. The earth always seeking its own balance, always adjusting, always settling into a quiet kind of rest. Part 2. How mountains form. There are several different ways a mountain can form, and each one is a different kind of story told by the earth. The most common type is called a fold mountain. These form when two tectonic plates push against each other, and the rock between them, rather than breaking, slowly buckles and folds, the way a tablecloth folds when you push it from both ends. The rock crumples upward into ridges and peaks and valleys. The Himalayas are fold mountains. So are the Alps in Europe, the Andes in South America, and the Appalachians in North America. Fold mountains tend to be the tallest and the most dramatic. They are built by compression, by the slow, steady pressure of continents pressing against each other, year after year after year. And the rock remembers every push, carrying the memory of that pressure in its twisted, folded layers. Another kind of mountain is called a fault block mountain. These form not from compression and folding, but from the Earth's crust cracking and shifting along lines called faults. When blocks of rock are pushed up on one side of a fault or dropped down on the other, a steep-sided mountain or plateau can form. The Sierra Nevada range in California is a good example. These mountains often have one very steep side, where the fault is, and one more gradually sloping side. They can form more quickly than fold mountains, at least in geological terms. And they remind us that the Earth's surface is, in a quiet and subtle way, always under tension, pulling and stretching and occasionally, over many thousands of years, giving way along ancient lines of weakness in the rock. Volcanic mountains are perhaps the most visually dramatic of all mountain types, and yet their formation, too, is a surprisingly slow and patient process. When magma, molten rock from deep inside the Earth, forces its way up through cracks in the crust and erupts at the surface, it cools and hardens into rock. Layer by layer, eruption by eruption, over thousands and sometimes millions of years, these hardened layers of lava build up into a mountain. Mount Fuji in Japan is a volcanic mountain, built from countless eruptions over many thousands of years. Kilimanjaro in Africa is another. Some volcanic mountains form over what geologists call hotspots, places where a plume of especially hot mantle material melts through the crust above. The Hawaiian Islands are a chain of volcanic mountains, each one formed as the Pacific plate slowly drifted over the same deep hotspot. Some mountains form when the land around them erodes away, leaving behind a harder, more resistant block of rock standing above the surrounding landscape. These are sometimes called erosional mountains or remnant mountains. Over millions of years, softer rock is worn away by wind, rain, rivers, and glaciers, while harder rock remains. The result can be an isolated peak or range standing alone in a landscape, like a monument to the rock that once surrounded it. Uluru, the great sandstone formation in the Australian outback, is sometimes described in this way: the last remnant of a much larger rock formation that has, over hundreds of millions of years, been slowly, quietly worn away. The mountain that remains is a kind of survivor, the hardest and most patient piece of a world that has changed enormously around it. The Appalachian Mountains in eastern North America are very old. among the oldest mountain ranges on Earth. They formed over 300 million years ago, when the ancient continents were colliding to form Pangaea. At that time, they may have been as tall as the Himalayas are today, vast, towering peaks stretching high into a very different sky. But over hundreds of millions of years, they have been slowly, gently worn down by wind and rain and ice and rivers. Today, they are rounded and low, soft, green hills compared to the sharp, dramatic peaks of younger ranges. They are a glimpse of what all mountains eventually become: gentle, quiet, slowly dissolving back into the plains and oceans from which their material originally came. Patient, worn, and somehow very beautiful in their age. The process by which mountains are slowly worn down over time is called erosion, and it is one of the most patient forces in nature. Rain falls on a mountain and trickles into tiny cracks in the rock. In cold weather, that water freezes and expands, very slightly widening the crack. Over time, over thousands and thousands of years, that crack grows. Pieces of rock break off. They are carried downhill by gravity, by rivers, by glaciers. Slowly, the mountain surface is worn away, grain by grain, flake by flake. The material that erodes from mountains does not disappear. It is carried into rivers, swept downstream, and eventually deposited on river deltas or ocean floors, where it becomes sediment, and then, over millions of years, new rock. The mountain, in a very real sense, becomes the land downstream. It transforms and continues. Glaciers are one of the most powerful agents of mountain erosion in the world. A glacier is simply a very large mass of ice that moves slowly under its own weight. As it moves, it grinds against the rock beneath it and around it, carving it away. The famous U-shaped valleys of the Alps and the Norwegian fjords were carved by glaciers over tens of thousands of years. Glaciers can gouge out cirques, bowl-shaped hollows at the heads of mountain valleys. They can carve arêtes, sharp, knife-edge ridges between two glacial valleys. They shape the mountain in ways that water alone cannot. And when the climate warms and the glacier retreats, it leaves behind a landscape that is completely transformed. New valleys, new lakes, new rocky terrain, all sculpted by the slow, quiet weight of ice moving through the mountains. Mountains affect the weather and climate of the regions around them in very significant ways. When moist air from the ocean moves inland and encounters a mountain range, it is forced upward. As it rises, it cools, and the moisture condenses into clouds and rain or snow. This is called orographic lift. The side of the mountain that faces the incoming moist air, called the windward side, tends to be very wet and lush, receiving large amounts of rainfall. But on the other side of the mountain, the leeward side, or the rain shadow, the air has already lost much of its moisture, and it descends warm and dry. This is why one side of a mountain can be covered in forest, and the other can be nearly desert. The same mountain, two completely different worlds, separated by just a ridge of rock. The temperature on a mountain decreases as you go higher. This is something most people know intuitively, but the reason is a little more subtle than it might seem. As air rises, it expands because the atmospheric pressure around it decreases. When a gas expands, it cools. This is why mountain peaks are cold even when the sun is shining brightly. The rate at which temperature drops with altitude is called the lapse rate, and it is roughly about 6.5 degrees Celsius for every 1,000 meters you climb. So a mountain that is 3,000 meters tall will, on average, be about 20 degrees Celsius colder at its peak than at its base. This cooling with altitude creates distinct zones on a mountain, from warm forests at the base to alpine meadows in the middle to bare rock and ice near the top, each one a different world. There is a feature of mountain climbing and mountain weather called the tree line, which is a very beautiful and very clear illustration of how altitude changes the world. As you climb a mountain, there comes a point where trees can no longer grow. Below this line, the mountain may be covered in forest. Above it, only low shrubs, grasses, mosses, and eventually bare rock can survive. The exact altitude of the tree line varies depending on latitude. Near the equator, where it is warm, the tree line can be quite high. Near the poles, it can be very low, or trees may not grow on mountains at all. The tree line is a quiet boundary, not marked by any sign, not decided by anyone. Just a place where the cold and the wind and the short growing season finally become too much for a tree to endure. Part 3. The rock itself. Granite is one of the most common rocks found in mountain ranges, and it is a rock with a long, quiet history. It forms deep underground, when magma cools very slowly over millions of years. Because it cools so slowly, large crystals have time to grow within it, the sparkly grains of quartz, feldspar, and mica that you can see when you look closely at a piece of granite. Granite is extremely hard and resistant to erosion, which is why mountains made largely of granite, like the Sierra Nevada, tend to have bold, dramatic shapes, their hard rock resisting the forces of wind and rain more stubbornly than softer stone. When you hold a piece of granite, you are holding something that formed millions of years ago, deep in the earth, in darkness and heat, slowly cooling, slowly crystallizing, patiently becoming what it is. Limestone is a sedimentary rock that plays a fascinating role in mountain landscapes. It forms from the shells and skeletons of ancient sea creatures, corals, mollusks, tiny marine organisms, that accumulated on the floors of ancient oceans over millions of years, pressing together into stone. Because of this, limestone is often full of fossils. It is also soluble in slightly acidic water, which means that rain, which picks up carbon dioxide from the air and becomes mildly acidic, slowly dissolves it. This creates a landscape called karst, full of caves, sinkholes, underground rivers, and strange, sculpted rock formations. There are mountain ranges made almost entirely of limestone, where the rock has been dissolved and carved into extraordinary shapes over millions of years. And somewhere inside those mountains, in ancient dark caves, are the faint impressions of creatures that lived in a sea that no longer exists. Metamorphic rock is rock that has been changed, transformed, by heat and pressure deep within the earth. The word metamorphic comes from the Greek for change of form. When rocks are buried deep in the earth during mountain building, they are subjected to enormous temperatures and pressures. Not quite enough to melt them, but enough to change their internal structure, to rearrange their minerals, to transform them into something new. Limestone becomes marble. Shale becomes slate. Sandstone becomes quartzite. These metamorphic rocks are often striped or foliated, layered in beautiful, flowing patterns that reveal the enormous forces that once acted on them. When you see a polished marble countertop, you are looking at ancient seabed limestone that was buried inside a mountain and slowly, quietly transformed by the heat and weight of the world above it. There is a type of rock called schist, and it is one of the most beautiful and interesting of the metamorphic rocks. Schist forms under very high pressures and temperatures, and it develops a strong layering, a kind of wavy, ribbon-like texture, made up of minerals like mica, which give it a silvery, shimmering quality. Some schists contain garnet crystals, deep red, jewel-like inclusions that grew within the rock under pressure. When you look at a piece of schist, you are looking at a rock that tells a very specific story about where it was in the earth and what it experienced there, how deep it was buried, how hot it became. Every band, every crystal is a record. The mountain does not forget. It simply writes its history very slowly, in the language of minerals. The oldest rocks ever found on Earth are approximately 4.4 billion years old. Tiny crystals of a mineral called zircon, found in Australia. The Earth itself is about 4.5 billion years old. So these crystals formed when the Earth was still very young, when the surface was still being violently shaped by impacts and volcanic activity. The fact that these tiny crystals survived, that they endured all the reshaping and recycling of rock that has happened since then, is remarkable. Most rocks are eventually eroded or subducted back into the mantle and melted, losing their identity. But these small, hard, chemically resistant zircon crystals persisted through it all. They are the oldest thing you can hold in your hand on this planet. Older than any mountain, older than any ocean, older than any life. Just small, quiet survivors of the very beginning. The rock cycle is a concept that describes how rocks of all kinds are constantly being made, changed, and remade over geological time. Magma cools to form igneous rock. That rock is exposed at the surface and eroded into sediment. The sediment is buried and compressed into sedimentary rock. That rock may be buried deeper and transformed into metamorphic rock. Or it may be carried back down into the mantle by tectonic processes, where it melts and becomes magma again, ready to begin the cycle once more. No rock is permanent. Every mountain is, in a sense, borrowed material, temporarily raised above the plain before eventually returning to the deep earth. It is a cycle of extraordinary patience, playing out over hundreds of millions of years, with no beginning and no end. Simply a continuous, gentle transformation. When geologists study rock, one of the most important things they look at is something called stratigraphy, the study of rock layers. In places where sedimentary rock has accumulated over millions of years and then been exposed by erosion or uplift, you can see the layers clearly, like the pages of a very old book. Each layer represents a period of time, a time when sediment was being deposited in a particular environment. The colors and compositions of the layers tell you about the environment at the time they formed. Red layers might indicate a desert. Dark layers might suggest a swamp or forest. Light limestone layers suggest a warm, shallow sea. The Grand Canyon in Arizona is one of the most spectacular places on Earth to see this layering. Nearly 2 billion years of rock history exposed in one vast, quiet cut through the landscape. Volcanoes and mountains are closely related, but not all volcanoes become mountains, and not all mountains are volcanic. However, the world's highest volcanic mountains are extraordinary. Mauna Kea in Hawaii, measured from its base on the ocean floor to its summit, is about 10,000 meters tall, taller than Everest by that measure, though most of it lies beneath the ocean. And in South America, the volcanic peaks of the Andes reach extraordinary heights. Ojos del Salado, on the border of Chile and Argentina, is the world's highest active volcano, sitting at about 6,893 meters above sea level. These mountains remind us that the inside of the Earth is still hot, still active, still finding ways to push its way to the surface, quietly, slowly, and sometimes spectacularly. One of the most fascinating aspects of mountain rock is that the highest peaks on Earth sometimes contain the fossils of sea creatures. On the slopes of the Himalayas, at altitudes of several thousand meters, geologists have found the fossilized remains of ammonites and other marine organisms that lived in an ancient ocean called the Tethys Sea, which existed between India and Asia before their collision began. The fact that these ocean floor fossils are now sitting near the top of the world is one of the most vivid illustrations of the enormous forces that plate tectonics can exert. The sea floor has been lifted, folded, and pushed to the top of the world. What was once the bottom of an ocean is now the roof of the earth. And in the rock, quietly, patiently, the record of that ancient sea remains. There is a mineral called olivine that is one of the most abundant minerals in the Earth's mantle. It is a beautiful pale green color, almost like a pale, clear sea glass. In some places, olivine-rich rocks are brought to the surface by volcanic activity, and you can find beaches where the sand has a faint greenish tint, made up of tiny grains of olivine. Papacolia Beach in Hawaii is one such place. Olivine is a reminder that the deep earth, the hot, dense world beneath our feet, is not entirely hidden from us. Occasionally, pieces of it are carried upward into the light. And when you hold a piece of olivine, you are holding something from a world very few people ever imagine. The deep, quiet interior of the planet, far beneath any mountain. Part 4. Time and Scale. The age of the universe is approximately 13.8 billion years. The Earth itself is about 4.5 billion years old, and the oldest mountain ranges on Earth are around 3 to 4 billion years old, though most of the major ranges we know today are far younger. The Himalayas, for example, began forming about 50 million years ago. The Alps began forming perhaps 35 million years ago. The Rocky Mountains of North America are between 80 and 55 million years old. These numbers are so large that they are difficult to truly feel. But here is one way to think about them. If the entire history of Earth were compressed into a single 24-hour day, human civilization, all of recorded history, would occupy only the final 2 seconds before midnight. And the Himalayas would have begun rising less than an hour before midnight. Mountains are not old to us. We are new to them. Geologists use a timeline called the geological time scale to organize the history of the Earth, and it has a wonderful, ancient quality to its names. Eons, eras, periods, epochs. The names include the Hadean, the Archean, the Proterozoic, the Paleozoic, the Mesozoic, the Cenozoic. The Hadean, named for Hades, the underworld, is the earliest period, when the Earth was young and hot and largely molten. No rocks from this period survive intact. The Archean is when the first stable crust formed, and the first hints of continental material appeared. Slowly, over billions of years, the jigsaw puzzle of the continents began to assemble itself, break apart, and reassemble, driven by the quiet churning of the mantle below. And through all of it, mountains rose and fell, seas advanced and retreated, and the rock kept its patient, silent record. One of the interesting things about very old mountain ranges is that they can be almost invisible, worn down so completely over hundreds of millions of years that only their roots remain. These ancient mountain roots, called cratons, are found in the hearts of many continents. They are very old, very stable pieces of crust that have not been significantly deformed in a very long time. Parts of Canada, Australia, Africa, and South America contain cratons that are 3 to 4 billion years old, among the oldest surfaces on Earth. These flat, ancient landscapes might not look like much, but beneath them, deeply buried, are the remains of mountains that rivaled the Himalayas in their time. Silent, invisible mountains, remembered only in the deep structure of the rock. Mountains are not just landforms. They are, in a geological sense, the surface expression of enormous forces acting deep in the crust. When geologists talk about mountain belts, they often talk about the root of the mountain, a deep keel of lighter crustal rock that extends down into the denser mantle. Just as an iceberg has more mass below the waterline than above it, a mountain has more rock below ground than above. A mountain that stands 8,000 meters above sea level may have a crustal root extending 50 or 60 kilometers below the surface. This root buoys the mountain up, floating it on the denser mantle below. And as the mountain erodes, as rain and ice and rivers slowly remove its upper layers, the root gradually rises, maintaining the mountain's height for far longer than you might expect. The mountain defends itself quietly from below. The speed of mountain building and erosion, while incredibly slow by human standards, varies significantly from one mountain range to another and from one period of Earth's history to another. Some mountain ranges have risen rapidly, in geological terms, while others have grown and eroded at a more leisurely pace. The Himalayas are rising relatively quickly, a few millimeters per year, because the Indian plate is still actively pushing into Asia. But erosion is also quite fast there, because the monsoon brings enormous amounts of rain, and rivers like the Ganges, the Indus, and the Brahmaputra carry vast quantities of eroded material down from the mountains every year. The Himalayas are in a kind of race between building and erosion, and at the moment, building is winning just barely, keeping the mountains at roughly their current heights. There is a scientific discipline called geochronology, which is the study of how old rocks are. One of its most important tools is radiometric dating, using the known, steady decay rates of radioactive elements within minerals to determine how old a rock is. Uranium decays to lead at a known rate. Potassium decays to argon. Carbon-14 decays to nitrogen. By measuring the ratio of the original element to its decay product in a mineral, scientists can calculate how long ago it formed. This technique has allowed geologists to put precise ages on rocks and mountain ranges and geological events with remarkable accuracy. It is a quiet, beautiful kind of detective work, reading time itself out of the chemistry of stone. The mountain does not tell you its age directly, but it leaves clues, written in the atoms of its minerals, for those patient enough to read them. If you go to a place where very old rocks are exposed at the surface, ancient granite in a valley, or Precambrian gneiss at the base of a cliff, and you run your hand across the rock, you are touching something that formed long before any animal with eyes existed on Earth. Before fish, before insects, before plants on land, before anything that would recognize the world as we know it. The rock is older than trees by perhaps 2 or 3 billion years. It formed in a world that was entirely different, an early Earth still figuring itself out, still finding its equilibrium. And yet the rock feels ordinary, solid, cool. It does not announce its age. It simply is patient and quiet, carrying its history entirely within itself, asking nothing of you, noticing nothing of the world that has changed so enormously around it. Mountains affect the distribution of life on Earth in ways that go far beyond their immediate slopes. They act as barriers to the movement of species, creating isolated populations that evolve separately over millions of years. The Himalayas, for example, separate the fauna and flora of South Asia from those of Central Asia. Many species that exist on one side of a mountain range simply do not exist on the other. Over very long periods, this isolation leads to speciation, the formation of new species. Mountain ranges are therefore not just physical features of the landscape. They are also the quiet architects of biological diversity. They draw invisible lines on the map of life, separating populations, encouraging divergence, gently nudging evolution along its slow, patient course. The word mountain has no universally agreed upon scientific definition. Different countries and organizations use different criteria. Some require a peak to be at least 300 meters above its surroundings. Others say 600 meters. Some require steepness. Others just require a certain height above sea level. This gentle ambiguity is rather charming. The Earth does not arrange itself according to our categories. Landforms exist on a continuous spectrum, from plains to hills to mountains to high plateaus. The boundaries we draw are human conveniences, not geological realities. A hill and a mountain are the same kind of thing, just at different scales. And what one person calls a mountain, another might call a very large hill. The land does not mind either way. It simply is what it is, patient and indifferent to our names for it. The tallest mountain on Earth, measured from its base, is not Mount Everest. Everest is the highest above sea level, at 8,849 meters. But Mauna Kea, the volcanic mountain in Hawaii, rises about 10,210 meters from its base on the ocean floor to its summit, making it the tallest mountain on Earth by that measure. And if we measure from the center of the Earth, not from sea level, then Mount Chimborazo in Ecuador wins. Because the Earth bulges slightly at the equator, and Chimborazo sits near it, so its summit is about 6,384 kilometers from the Earth's center, compared to Everest's 6,382 kilometers. These small differences remind us that measurement is always a matter of perspective. The mountain you choose to call tallest depends on how you choose to measure, and each measurement reveals something true about the world. Part 5: Life on Mountains. Life finds a way onto mountains, even in the most difficult conditions. High-altitude environments are cold, windy, and receive intense ultraviolet radiation because there is less atmosphere above to filter it. And yet life is there. Cushion plants, small, low-growing plants that form dense, compact mounds to protect themselves from wind, can be found at extraordinary altitudes. Certain mosses and lichens grow on bare rock at over 6,000 meters in the Himalayas, making them some of the highest altitude plants on Earth. They grow very slowly in the thin, cold air. A few square centimeters of lichen on a mountain rock might be decades old. Life at these altitudes is quiet, minimal, patient, stripped down to the essentials, clinging to rock, waiting for the brief warm season, doing just enough to survive. There is something deeply moving about that kind of quiet persistence. The snow leopard is one of the most elusive and beautiful animals on Earth, and it is a creature of the mountains. It lives at altitudes of between 3,000 and 5,500 meters across the mountain ranges of Central Asia, the Himalayas, the Karakoram, the Hindu Kush, the Altai. It is extraordinarily well adapted to its environment. Its thick, pale, spotted coat provides insulation and camouflage against the rocky, snow-covered landscape. Its large paws act like snowshoes, distributing its weight on soft snow. Its long, thick tail helps with balance on steep terrain and can be wrapped around its body for warmth. The snow leopard is so well adapted to its mountain home that it is almost invisible in it, a ghost of the high peaks, moving slowly and quietly through some of the most dramatic and remote landscapes on Earth. Above a certain altitude on mountains, usually above about 5,000 to 6,000 meters in tropical ranges, the environment is too harsh for most multicellular life. But even there, in the thin, cold air, microscopic life persists. Scientists have found bacteria and algae living in the ice and snow of high mountain environments. Extremophiles, creatures that thrive in conditions most life finds impossible. Some of these bacteria are found in the snowpack itself, where they use sunlight for energy and live at temperatures just below freezing. When you look at a high mountain snowfield from a distance, it looks completely sterile, completely empty of life. But it is not. Invisible life is there, tiny, slow, quiet, doing what life has always done. Finding a way to persist, wherever there is a little energy and a little water, however cold or thin the air. Many of the world's great rivers begin in mountains. The Ganges, the Yangtze, the Amazon, the Nile, the Colorado, the Rhine, all of them trace their origins to rain and snowmelt in mountain ranges. Mountains act as water towers for the world's lowlands. Snow accumulates in the mountains during winter and melts slowly in spring and summer, releasing a steady flow of water into rivers that sustain billions of people downstream. The glaciers of mountain ranges are an even longer-term water store, holding water for decades or centuries before slowly releasing it. As mountain glaciers shrink in a warming climate, the rivers they feed are affected. In the short term, there may be more water as the glaciers melt. But in the longer term, as the glaciers diminish, the steady flow they provide will be reduced. Mountains are, quietly and essentially, the source of much of the world's fresh water. The bar-headed goose is one of the most extraordinary migratory animals on Earth. Twice a year, it flies directly over the Himalayas, crossing passes at altitudes of over 7,000 meters. On its migrations between its breeding grounds in Central Asia and its wintering grounds in South Asia. At those altitudes, the air contains less than a third the oxygen of air at sea level. The bar-headed goose has several physiological adaptations that allow it to do this. A hemoglobin that binds oxygen more efficiently than that of most birds, a more efficient breathing mechanism, and a very high density of capillaries in its muscles. It also tends to fly at night, when the air is denser. The bar-headed goose makes one of the most demanding journeys of any creature on Earth, twice a year, very quietly and without fuss, over the highest mountains in the world. Alpine meadows, the grassy, flower-filled meadows that occur above the tree line but below the permanent snowline on many mountains, are among the most beautiful and biodiverse habitats on Earth because they experience extreme conditions, short growing seasons, intense sunlight, sudden frosts. The plants that live in them have evolved an astonishing variety of strategies to survive. Many alpine flowers are very small to conserve energy. Many are intensely colored to attract the few pollinators that reach such altitudes. Many can photosynthesize even at very low temperatures. The diversity of species in alpine meadows is often surprisingly high. Dozens of different plant species in a small patch of ground, each occupying a slightly different niche. And these meadows exist in a very particular window of altitude and climate. Too low and the trees take over, too high and the snow never fully melts. Mountains are home to a disproportionate share of the world's biodiversity. This is partly because of the variety of habitats they contain, from lowland forest at the base to alpine tundra at the top, and partly because mountains act as refuges during periods of climatic change. During ice ages, when lowland habitats were covered in ice, the lower slopes of some mountains remained habitable, allowing species to survive there that were extinct elsewhere. Mountains also isolate populations, encouraging the development of unique species found nowhere else. The mountains of East Africa, the Andes, the Himalayas, the tropical mountains of Southeast Asia, all are centers of extraordinary biological richness. About a quarter of the world's terrestrial biodiversity is found in mountain regions, even though mountains cover only a small fraction of the Earth's land area. The yak is one of the most remarkable domestic animals in the world, adapted over thousands of years of life at high altitude in the Himalayas and the Tibetan Plateau. Yaks can live comfortably at altitudes of up to 6,000 meters, altitudes that would cause altitude sickness in most humans. They have several adaptations that make this possible: larger lungs and hearts than lowland cattle, hemoglobin that binds oxygen more efficiently at low partial pressures, and a thick, shaggy coat that keeps them warm in extreme cold. For the peoples of the Himalayas and Tibet, the yak is an essential animal, providing milk, meat, fiber for clothing, hides for shelter, and the ability to carry loads across high mountain passes. The yak and the mountain are deeply intertwined, one shaped by the other over thousands of years. There is a phenomenon called mountain endemism, the tendency for mountains to harbor species found nowhere else on Earth. An endemic species is one that is unique to a particular place. Because mountains are, in a sense, islands of habitat, surrounded by lowland environments that many mountain species cannot cross, populations on different mountain ranges can become isolated and evolve separately. Over time, these isolated populations become distinct species. The mountains of Ethiopia, for example, are home to the Ethiopian wolf, a strikingly beautiful canid found nowhere else on Earth, restricted to the high alpine meadows of a handful of Ethiopian mountain ranges. The mountains of Madagascar harbor plants and animals found nowhere else. Every isolated mountain range is, in a sense, its own world, its own experiment in evolution, playing out over millions of years. Coniferous forests, forests dominated by pine, spruce, fir, and similar trees, are common on the middle slopes of mountain ranges in temperate regions. These forests have a quiet, particular beauty: tall trees with downward sweeping branches that shed snow, dark needles that photosynthesize even in winter, a soft, needle-covered floor that muffles sound and slows footsteps. The scent of a coniferous mountain forest, pine resin, cool, damp soil, the faint sharpness of cold air, is one of the most calming sensory experiences many people know. These forests are home to an enormous variety of wildlife: deer, bears, wolves, lynx, owls, woodpeckers, and countless smaller creatures. They process enormous amounts of carbon dioxide and produce oxygen. They regulate the flow of water from mountains to valleys. And they are, in their way, very ancient. Conifers are among the oldest groups of trees on Earth. Part 6: Mountains and Human Life. Humans have been living in and around mountains for as long as our species has existed. Mountains provided shelter, food, water, and protection. Mountain passes were routes of trade and migration. Mountain resources, minerals, timber, game, were essential to many ancient civilizations. And mountains inspired some of the earliest and most powerful human spiritual traditions. For many cultures, mountains were the dwelling places of gods, the meeting points of earth and sky, the places where the sacred and the everyday came closest together. Mount Olympus in Greece was home to the gods of the Greek pantheon. Mount Sinai in the Middle East was where Moses received the Ten Commandments. Mount Kailash in Tibet is considered sacred in Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and the ancient Bon religion. Mountains and the human spiritual imagination have always been deeply intertwined. The word altitude comes from the Latin word for height and altitude sickness. The physical discomfort that many people experience at high altitudes is a very real and sometimes serious condition. As you ascend to higher altitudes, the air pressure decreases and there is less oxygen available in each breath you take. The body responds in various ways. Breathing becomes faster, the heart beats more quickly, red blood cell production increases. But these adaptations take time. If you ascend too quickly, your body does not have time to adjust, and the symptoms of altitude sickness appear: headaches, nausea, fatigue, dizziness. Above about 8,000 meters, the so-called death zone on the world's highest peaks, the oxygen is so thin that no human body can acclimatize. Climbers in the death zone are slowly dying, simply from being there. They must ascend and descend quickly, without lingering. Some mountain communities have lived at very high altitudes for so long that their populations have evolved genetic adaptations to the thin air. The peoples of the Tibetan Plateau, who live at altitudes averaging over 4,000 meters, have several genetic variants that allow their bodies to function more efficiently in low-oxygen environments. One of the most important is a version of a gene called EPS1, sometimes called the superathlete gene, which regulates the body's response to low oxygen. Interestingly, the Tibetan version of this gene appears to have been inherited, at least in part, from an ancient group of humans called the Denisovans, a mysterious human species that lived in Asia tens of thousands of years ago, before going extinct. The mountains shaped not just the landscape, but the very genetics of the people who lived on them. Mountain agriculture has given the world some of its most important food crops. The highlands of Ethiopia are the original home of coffee, which grows wild at altitudes of around 1,800 to 2,700 meters. The Andean highlands of South America gave the world the potato, one of the most important food crops in human history, along with many varieties of maize, quinoa, and other plants. The mountain farmers of the Andes developed an extraordinary variety of potato cultivars over thousands of years. There are still communities in Peru that grow several hundred distinct varieties. These mountain farmers, working slowly and patiently over generations, adapted their crops to specific altitudes, soil types, and microclimates, creating an agricultural diversity that is one of humanity's greatest treasures. The Silk Road, the ancient network of trade routes connecting China with Central Asia, the Middle East, and Europe, was shaped enormously by mountains. The great mountain ranges of Central Asia, the Pamir, the Tian Shan, the Hindu Kush, the Karakoram, were both barriers and corridors. Certain passes through these mountains became critical nodes of trade and cultural exchange. The Khyber Pass, connecting present-day Afghanistan and Pakistan, has been a route of armies and merchants for thousands of years. The Karakoram Pass, at over 5,000 meters, was one of the high routes of the Silk Road. Along these mountain routes, silk, spices, ideas, religions, and diseases flowed between civilizations. The mountains did not merely witness human history. They shaped it, channeled it, determined which peoples would meet and which would remain forever separated. The first recorded ascent of a major mountain peak purely for exploration and achievement occurred in 1786, when Michel Gabriel Paccard and Jacques Balmat reached the summit of Mont Blanc in the Alps, Europe's highest peak at 4,807 meters. This climb is often considered the beginning of mountaineering as a sport and pursuit. Before this, mountains were generally avoided rather than sought out. They were seen as dangerous and forbidding. But something began to change in the 18th century, as Enlightenment ideas about nature and exploration spread. Mountains began to be seen as beautiful, sublime, even. The word sublime, in the philosophical sense, describes something so vast and powerful that it is both awe-inspiring and slightly frightening. Mountains, more than perhaps anything else, embody that quality, calm and distant and enormous, quietly indifferent to human presence. The Andes Mountains of South America run for approximately 7,000 kilometers along the western edge of the continent, the longest continental mountain range on Earth. They are a young range, formed by the subduction of the Pacific Ocean's oceanic plates beneath the South American continent, and they are still volcanically and seismically active. The Andes contain the highest active volcanoes on Earth, some of the world's highest peaks, the world's highest navigable lake, Lake Titicaca, at 3,812 meters, and an extraordinary range of ecosystems. From the coastal deserts of the Atacama to the cloud forests of the eastern slopes to the high-altitude grasslands of the Puna. They are home to condors, pumas, spectacled bears, llamas, alpacas, and thousands of plant species found nowhere else. The Andes are, in every sense, a spine of the world. Lake Titicaca, sitting on the border between Peru and Bolivia at about 3,812 meters above sea level, is one of the most extraordinary bodies of water on Earth. It is the highest navigable lake in the world, and the largest lake in South America by volume. The Inca civilization, one of the most sophisticated civilizations of the pre-Columbian Americas, considered Titicaca to be sacred, the place where the world was created, where the sun and moon were born. On its surface and on its islands, communities still live in ways that are deeply connected to the lake and the mountains around it. The Uros people live on floating islands made from the tatora reed that grows in the shallow parts of the lake, a way of life uniquely adapted to this high, cold mountain lake. The lake and the mountains and the people are all part of the same slow, patient story. The Alps are one of the most studied mountain ranges in the world, and they were central to the development of geology as a science. In the 18th and 19th centuries, Swiss and French naturalists began systematically studying the rocks, glaciers, and landscapes of the Alps, and many of the foundational concepts of geology were developed from this work. Louis Agassiz, working in Switzerland in the 1830s and 40s, developed the theory of ice ages, the idea that glaciers had once covered vast areas of the northern hemisphere, partly from his observations of alpine glaciers and the marks they left on the landscape. Horace Benedict de Saussure, who sponsored the first ascent of Mont Blanc, made extensive scientific observations of the Alps and is considered one of the founders of geology. The mountains, patient and immovable, taught the first geologists how to read the earth. Mountain light is a particular and beautiful thing. At high altitudes, with less atmosphere above to scatter and filter sunlight, the light is more intense and clearer than at sea level. Colors are different. Skies are a deeper blue. Sunsets can be extraordinary. Stars at night are brighter and more numerous. The quality of light in mountain landscapes has attracted artists and photographers for as long as both crafts have existed. The Romantic painters of the 18th and 19th centuries were particularly drawn to mountain landscapes. Turner's dramatic alpine scenes, Caspar David Friedrich's figures standing at mountain summits, contemplating vast and misty views. There is something about mountain light and mountain scale that puts the human figure in perspective. Small, quiet, surrounded by something vast and ancient and indifferent. It is a feeling that artists have always found worth capturing. Part 7. Ice glaciers and snowfields. A glacier is born very slowly. It begins as snow, snowflakes falling in a mountain valley, accumulating year after year, the new snow pressing on the old. Over time, the fluffy snowflakes are compressed and transformed. The air between them is squeezed out. The crystals recrystallize and interlock. The snow becomes firn, a granular, partially compacted form of ice. And eventually, under the weight of more snow above, firn becomes glacial ice. The ice is compressed so densely that it scatters red light more than blue, giving deep glacial ice a striking, luminous blue color. This transformation from snow to glacier ice can take decades or even centuries. And once formed, the glacier begins its slow, quiet journey down the mountain, moving not because it flows like water, but because the ice at its base deforms under the immense weight above, sliding and creeping, inch by inch, year by year. The speed of a glacier varies enormously depending on its temperature, steepness, and the amount of water at its base. Most glaciers move at speeds ranging from a few meters to a few hundred meters per year. But some glaciers, called surge glaciers, can suddenly accelerate to speeds of several kilometers per year. A sprint by geological standards, though still barely perceptible to human eyes. The cause of these surges is not fully understood, but appears to involve changes in the water beneath the glacier, which can act as a lubricant. Most of the time, glaciers move in their patient, quiet way, inch by inch, carrying their cargo of rock and debris down the mountain slope, carving valleys, depositing moraines, feeding rivers. They are the slowest kind of river, made of solid water, flowing so slowly that you would never see it move. When a glacier melts or breaks apart at its lower end, it deposits the rock and debris it has been carrying. These deposits are called moraines. A moraine at the sides of a glacier is a lateral moraine. Where two glaciers meet, their lateral moraines join to form a medial moraine, a stripe of debris running down the middle of the merged glacier. At the glacier's furthest extent, its snout, the debris accumulates into a terminal moraine, a ridge of mixed rock and sediment that marks how far the glacier once reached. These moraines are geological records. They tell scientists exactly how large a glacier once was, and how it has changed over time. When you see a ridge of rocky debris curving across a valley well below the current glacier, you are looking at the memory of a larger, colder time, the glacier's own history, left quietly in stone. One of the most beautiful features of glacial mountain landscapes is the cirque, a bowl-shaped hollow carved by a glacier at the head of a valley. Cirques form where snow accumulates and begins to develop into a glacier. The freezing and thawing of water in cracks around the accumulation area gradually breaks up the underlying rock, and the glacier slowly excavates a bowl. When the glacier retreats, it may leave behind a cirque lake called a tarn, a still, cold, deep blue lake sitting in the hollow of the mountain, reflecting the sky and the surrounding peaks. These tarns are often extraordinarily beautiful, small, quiet, perfectly clear, surrounded by the bare rock walls of the cirque. Some of them are remarkably deep, and they have a quality of stillness and isolation that makes them feel like places apart from the ordinary world. The last great ice age peaked about 20,000 years ago, when vast ice sheets covered much of North America, Europe, and Asia, and mountain glaciers worldwide were much larger than they are today. At that time, glaciers descended much further down mountain slopes, carving valleys that now hold forests and farms and cities. As the climate warmed and the ice retreated, beginning roughly 15,000 to 10,000 years ago, the landscape the glaciers left behind was completely transformed. The Great Lakes of North America are, in large part, the legacy of Ice Age glaciation. The fjords of Norway and Alaska were carved by glaciers. The rounded, lake-dotted landscape of much of Canada and northern Europe is a glacial landscape. We live, in many regions of the world, in a landscape shaped not by today's climate, but by the last ice age, a cold, quiet period that ended long before any written human history began. Mountain glaciers around the world are currently retreating, shrinking in response to rising global temperatures. This is a slow process, not dramatic or sudden, but the cumulative effect over decades has been significant. Glaciers that once extended far down mountain valleys now terminate much higher up. Some smaller glaciers have entirely disappeared in the last century. The retreat of mountain glaciers affects the rivers they feed, the ecosystems around them, and the communities that depend on them for water. It also contributes, in a small way, to rising sea levels. Scientists monitor glacier retreat through a combination of satellite images, historical photographs, and on-the-ground measurements. The change, while slow, is measurable and undeniable. The mountains are not the same as they were 100 years ago, not dramatically different, but quietly, gently, perceptibly changed. Permafrost is permanently frozen ground, soil or rock that remains frozen year-round, sometimes to great depths. It is common in high mountain environments and polar regions. In mountain areas, permafrost helps to stabilize slopes by binding loose material together with ice. But as temperatures rise, permafrost can thaw, destabilizing slopes and increasing the risk of landslides and rock falls. In the Alps, increased rock falls in recent decades have been linked, in part, to thawing permafrost at high altitudes. Permafrost also contains large amounts of organic material that has been frozen for thousands of years. As it thaws, this material can decompose, releasing carbon dioxide and methane, greenhouse gases that can contribute to further warming. The permafrost of mountain and polar regions is not just a geological curiosity. It is a significant part of the Earth's climate system. There is a layer on very high mountains called the nivation zone, the zone of perennial snow and ice, above which snow never completely melts even in summer. The boundary between seasonal snow and perennial snow is called the equilibrium line altitude. Below it, more snow melts in summer than accumulates in winter. Above it, more accumulates than melts, and glaciers can form. The height of the equilibrium line varies with climate. It is lower in cold, wet regions and higher in warm, dry ones. On the high tropical peaks of the Andes, the equilibrium line is very high, near the very tops of the mountains. On Greenland, it is very low, and almost the entire island is above it, making Greenland one vast ice sheet. The equilibrium line is, in a sense, the line between summer and winter that never moves, the mountain's own quiet climate boundary. Avalanches are one of the most dynamic phenomena in mountain environments. An avalanche occurs when a mass of snow becomes unstable due to overloading by new snowfall, warming, or a disturbance, and begins to slide down a slope. They can move at speeds of up to 300 kilometers per hour and can carry enormous amounts of material. But most avalanches are small and go unobserved, happening far from any human presence. Mountains regularly shed small amounts of snow and debris in a continuous, low-level adjustment, a quiet maintenance of the slope. The snow that accumulates is not meant to stay indefinitely. It is borrowed from the atmosphere, held briefly on the slope, and returned to the valley, to rivers, eventually to the ocean and the atmosphere again. Even in their most dramatic moments, avalanches are simply part of the mountain's slow, patient work of moving material from high to low. Snow crystals, snowflakes, are one of the most complex and beautiful small structures in nature. Each crystal forms as water vapor in a cloud freezes around a small particle of dust or other material. The crystal grows as more water vapor freezes onto it, forming the characteristic six-sided, branching shapes that everyone recognizes. The exact shape of a snow crystal depends on the temperature and humidity of the air it falls through. Different conditions produce different branching patterns. No two snow crystals are exactly alike, though they all share the fundamental six-fold symmetry of the water molecule. Each snowflake that falls on a mountain is a unique, temporary structure, forming in the cloud, falling for a few minutes through cold mountain air, landing softly, and eventually becoming part of the snowpack, slowly compressed, eventually flowing away as meltwater, returning to the sea. Part 8. The Physics of Mountains. There is a mathematical relationship between the height of a mountain and the behavior of its slopes, and it is connected to something called the angle of repose. This is the steepest angle at which a pile of loose material, sand, gravel, rock fragments, can stand without sliding. For most loose rocky material, this angle is around 30 to 40 degrees. This is why you rarely see natural mountain slopes steeper than about 45 degrees in loose material. Gravity prevents it. Harder, more solid rock can form steeper slopes, but even solid rock has limits. Eventually, undercutting erosion or freeze-thaw action breaks it. Mountains are always in a conversation with gravity, always tending toward the angle at which they can just barely hold themselves up, always slowly, gently settling toward the horizontal plane that gravity ultimately prefers. The pressure at the base of a mountain is enormous. Imagine the weight of billions of tons of rock pressing down on the crust below. This pressure is so great that the rock at the base of a large mountain can be slightly deformed, compressed, and heated by the weight above. It is also why the roots of mountains extend deep into the Earth's mantle. The lighter crustal rock floats on the denser mantle like a massive iceberg, with the bulk of the mountain's mass concealed below the surface. This balance, called isostasy, means that as a mountain erodes, the root rises, keeping the mountain at roughly the same height for longer than it would if the crust were rigid. It is a natural, automatic compensation, the Earth's quiet way of maintaining its own equilibrium over millions of years. The sound environment of a high mountain is very different from that of a valley or lowland. At high altitudes, the air is thinner and sound travels differently. There is often a quality of extraordinary silence in high mountain environments, especially in the upper reaches of glaciated peaks, far from any wind or flowing water. The absence of biological noise, insects, birds, frogs, contributes to this. Snowfields absorb sound rather than reflecting it, and the thin air carries sound less efficiently over distance. People who have spent time at very high altitudes often describe the silence as almost otherworldly, a deep physical quietness that feels different from any ordinary silence. Some find it peaceful, some find it slightly disorienting. It is the silence of a world that exists just beyond the edge of the living zone, where the ordinary background noise of life has faded away. Light behaves differently at high altitudes. Because there is less atmosphere above, ultraviolet radiation is more intense, roughly 10 to 15% more intense for every 1,000 meters of altitude. This is why high-altitude mountaineers need to protect their skin and eyes from the sun, even in cold conditions. Snow and ice also reflect a very high percentage of sunlight, up to about 90%, making the light environment on a snowfield particularly intense. At the same time, the sky appears a deeper, more saturated blue at high altitudes because there is less air above to scatter the light. And at sunset and sunrise, the light on high peaks can be extraordinary. The phenomenon known as alpenglow, where the peaks glow pink and orange in the last light of the day, while the valleys below have already fallen into shadow. It is one of the most beautiful natural light shows on Earth. The atmosphere on Earth is held in place by gravity, and it thins steadily with altitude. At sea level, the atmospheric pressure is about 101 kilopascals. At the top of Everest, it is only about 33 kilopascals, roughly a third of sea level pressure. This means that at the summit of Everest, each breath contains only about a third as much oxygen as a breath at sea level. The boiling point of water also decreases with altitude. Water boils at about 100 degrees Celsius at sea level, but at only about 70 degrees Celsius at the altitude of Everest's summit. This means that if you tried to cook an egg in boiling water at the top of Everest, the water would not be hot enough to cook it properly. The mountain exists in a physically different world, different pressure, different temperature, different light, a world that human bodies are not designed for, but that some extraordinary people have learned to navigate briefly and carefully. There is a phenomenon called a temperature inversion that sometimes occurs in mountain valleys. Normally, air temperature decreases with altitude, but during still, clear nights, the air in a valley can cool faster than the air higher on the slopes, creating a situation where cold air pools in the valley floor while warmer air sits above it. You can sometimes see this as a layer of mist or cloud filling the valley below, while the mountain slopes above it are clear and bright in the morning sun. Mountain communities in such valleys can experience colder temperatures than communities higher up on the slopes. Fruit orchards planted on valley floors can be more vulnerable to frost than orchards at slightly higher elevations. The mountain shapes its own local climate in subtle and interesting ways that vary from valley to valley, slope to slope, season to season. The orientation of a mountain slope, whether it faces north or south, east or west, has a large effect on the environment it creates. In the northern hemisphere, south-facing slopes receive more direct sunlight and are warmer and drier. North-facing slopes are cooler and shadier and tend to hold snow longer and support different vegetation. This is why the two sides of many mountain valleys in the northern hemisphere look quite different from each other. One side open and sunny with grasses and shrubs, the other darker and more forested with mosses and ferns. The ecological difference between these two sides, called the aspect effect, can be surprisingly large. Species that are common on a sunny south-facing slope may be entirely absent from the shaded north-facing slope just across the valley. The mountain creates diversity simply through the geometry of its slopes and the angle of the sun. Mountains also create their own local wind systems. During the day, the sun heats the rocky slopes of a mountain, which in turn warms the air above them. This warm air rises up the slope, a phenomenon called an anabatic or valley wind. At night, the slopes cool quickly by radiating heat into the sky, and the cold, dense air flows down the mountain, a katabatic or mountain wind. In many mountain valleys, you can feel these winds as a very regular cycle, a breeze flowing upslope in the morning and early afternoon, and a cooler flow coming down at night. These winds are important for the ecology of the mountain. They distribute seeds and pollen, affect where moisture collects, and create a quiet rhythm of movement in the air of the mountain valley. The mountain breathes, in its own slow way, every single day. In mountain areas prone to avalanches, there is a phenomenon called a wind blast, a wave of air pressure ahead of a large avalanche that can knock down trees and structures before the snow itself arrives. Large avalanches can generate their own microweather. They push enormous volumes of air ahead of them as they move, and in their wake they can create updrafts and wind vortices. But most of the time, the mountain's relationship with air and wind is far more subtle and gentle than this, a constant, quiet exchange of heat and moisture and movement. The mountain and the atmosphere always in conversation, always affecting each other, always part of the same interconnected system of energy and water that shapes the climate of the entire planet. There is a phenomenon called the Bernoulli effect, and while it is usually described in the context of aircraft wings and fluid dynamics, it also operates in mountain environments. When wind flows over a mountain ridge, it is compressed and accelerated as it passes through narrow gaps or over peaks. This creates areas of lower pressure on the downwind side, which can draw air from the valleys below. Mountain passes can funnel wind into very high speeds. The Mistral wind that flows through the Rhône Valley in France, for example, is partly shaped by the Alps and can reach high speeds even when conditions elsewhere are calm. Wind in mountain environments is not random. It follows the shapes of the mountains, is channeled and accelerated by the terrain, and creates patterns that are very specific to each particular place. The mountain is a sculptor of wind as much as it is a product of rock. Part 9: Volcanoes and Deep Fire. Volcanoes are, in a sense, windows into the deep earth, places where the interior makes its way to the surface. The material that erupts from a volcano is magma, molten rock from deep within the earth. And when it reaches the surface, it is called lava. Lava can vary enormously in composition and behavior. Some lava is thin and runny and flows quickly for long distances, like the basaltic lava of Hawaiian volcanoes. Other lava is thick and viscous and barely flows at all, building steep-sided volcanic domes. The composition of the lava determines the type of eruption. Runny, basaltic lava tends to erupt relatively gently. Thick, silica-rich lava traps gases, building up pressure, and can erupt much more explosively. Every eruption, whether gentle or dramatic, is a moment when the deep earth comes to the surface, the mountain giving birth to itself slowly from the inside. The Hawaiian Islands are a beautiful illustration of how volcanic mountain chains can form over hotspots. The Pacific Plate is moving slowly toward the northwest, at about 7 to 9 centimeters per year. Beneath it, there is a fixed hotspot, a place where a plume of unusually hot mantle material melts through the crust. As the plate moves over the hotspot, a new volcanic island forms above it, while the older islands to the northwest are slowly carried away and begin to erode. The oldest Hawaiian islands to the northwest are low and worn, while the youngest, the Big Island of Hawaii, sits directly over the hotspot and is still growing. Far to the northwest, the chain of islands continues below the ocean surface as a series of seamounts, mountains that once stood above the waves but have been eroded and submerged over millions of years. The hotspot chain is a record of the plate's slow journey, written in stone and fire. The Ring of Fire is a zone encircling the Pacific Ocean where a large proportion of the world's volcanic and seismic activity occurs. It is shaped by the subduction of oceanic plates beneath continental and other oceanic plates around the edges of the Pacific. As a dense oceanic plate slides beneath a lighter continental plate, it carries water into the hot mantle. The water lowers the melting point of the mantle rock, generating magma that rises and erupts as volcanoes. The Ring of Fire includes the volcanic mountains of the Andes, the Cascades of North America, the volcanoes of Japan, the Philippines, Indonesia, and New Zealand. About 75% of the world's active volcanoes are along the Ring of Fire, and it is the source of about 90% of the world's earthquakes. The Pacific Ocean is ringed by mountains of fire, slowly, continuously being born and dying. Mount St. Helens in Washington State, USA, is famous for its dramatic eruption in 1980, which blew off a large part of the mountain's north side and reduced its summit from 2,950 meters to 2,549 meters. The eruption was preceded by weeks of small earthquakes and steam eruptions, and a noticeable bulge developing on the north side of the mountain as magma pushed upward inside. The eventual eruption was triggered by a large landslide that released the pressure and caused a lateral explosion, a sideways blast of hot gas, ash, and debris that devastated an enormous area of forest. And yet, even before the ash had fully settled, life began to return. Pocket gophers had survived underground, their burrowing mixing soil and nutrients. Insects arrived. Plants began to grow. The mountain, in its devastation, had created new opportunities for life, a reminder that in geology and in ecology, endings and beginnings are the same thing. Pumice is a volcanic rock with a very unusual property. It floats on water. Pumice forms when lava that is full of dissolved gas erupts so quickly that the gas cannot escape smoothly. Instead, it froths the lava into a mass of tiny bubbles that solidify before they can collapse. The result is a rock that is more air than stone, full of tiny, closed pores that make it less dense than water. After a large volcanic eruption near or in the ocean, vast rafts of pumice can float on the ocean surface for months or years, drifting with the currents. These pumice rafts can carry organisms, algae, barnacles, small crabs, across enormous distances, acting as tiny floating islands of habitat. It is a strange and beautiful thing. Rock that floats, born from fire and gas and the explosive meeting of magma and air. Obsidian is a volcanic glass, formed when silica-rich lava cools so quickly that there is no time for crystals to grow. The result is a smooth, glassy, jet-black rock with a conchoidal fracture, meaning it breaks into smooth, curved surfaces with very sharp edges. For thousands of years, people around the world used obsidian to make cutting tools, blades, arrowheads, scrapers. In surgery, obsidian blades can be made sharper than the finest steel surgical instruments. Archaeological finds of obsidian tools far from any volcanic source tell us about ancient trade routes and human movement. Some of the obsidian found in European Neolithic sites was sourced from volcanic islands in the Aegean, hundreds of kilometers away. The fire of ancient volcanoes, cooled and sharpened by human hands, traveled the world as tools, cutting and shaping the human story. Geysers are a fascinating phenomenon closely related to volcanic activity. They occur where groundwater seeps down through cracks in the rock to a depth where it is heated by magma or hot rock, then forced back upward under pressure, erupting periodically at the surface. The most famous geyser system in the world is in Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming, which sits atop one of the world's largest volcanic hotspots. Old Faithful, Yellowstone's most famous geyser, erupts roughly every 90 minutes, sending a column of hot water and steam high into the air. Yellowstone's hotspot has produced some of the largest volcanic eruptions in Earth's history, supervolcanic eruptions that dwarfed anything in recorded human experience. These eruptions occurred roughly every 600,000 to 800,000 years. The last one was about 640,000 years ago. The ground above it is very slowly breathing, rising and falling by centimeters over decades as magma moves below. The Deccan Traps in India are one of the largest volcanic features on Earth. A vast plateau of basaltic lava covering about 500,000 square kilometers. They were formed by an extraordinary sequence of volcanic eruptions that occurred roughly 66 million years ago, around the same time as the mass extinction that killed the non-avian dinosaurs. The Deccan eruptions released enormous quantities of carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere, potentially affecting the global climate. Whether the eruptions contributed to the mass extinction, or whether the mass extinction was caused primarily by the asteroid impact at Chicxulub in Mexico, or some combination of both, is still debated by scientists. But the scale of the Deccan Traps is a reminder that the Earth's internal heat can express itself not just in individual volcanoes and mountain ranges, but in vast, sustained outpourings of lava covering areas larger than most countries. Hot springs are another expression of volcanic and geothermal heat in mountain environments. Where heated groundwater reaches the surface at a temperature below boiling, it forms hot springs. These springs can be found in many volcanic mountain regions, in Iceland, in Japan, in the Rockies, in the Andes. Hot springs create unique microhabitats, warm, mineral-rich pools that support communities of organisms adapted to the unusual conditions. Thermophilic bacteria, heat-loving microorganisms, thrive in hot springs at temperatures that would kill most life. The Yellowstone hot springs are famous for their vivid colors, produced by different communities of these thermophilic bacteria living at different temperatures. Some of the first evidence that life could exist in extreme environments came from hot spring bacteria, and these discoveries eventually expanded our understanding of where life might exist elsewhere in the universe. There is a concept in geology called the Wilson cycle, named after the Canadian geophysicist J. Tuzo Wilson. It describes the full life cycle of an ocean basin, from its birth as a small rift between continents, to its growth into a full ocean, to its eventual closing as the continents converge again and the ocean floor is subducted. The cycle takes hundreds of millions of years to complete. Mountain ranges are formed near the end of the cycle, as the closing ocean pushes up the rocks of its margins into fold mountain belts. After the mountains form, erosion slowly wears them away, and eventually hundreds of millions of years later, a new rift may form in the eroded roots of the old mountains, beginning a new Wilson cycle. The Atlantic Ocean is currently widening. The Pacific Ocean is shrinking. Somewhere in the future, in a world almost unimaginably different from ours, the Pacific will close and new mountains will rise where it once lay. Part 10: Mountains and the Cosmos. Mountains exist on other planets and moons, and some of them make Earth's mountains seem small. Olympus Mons on Mars is the largest volcano in the solar system, about 22 kilometers high and 600 kilometers wide at its base. It is so wide that if you stood at its center, you would not be able to see its edges over the Martian horizon. It is nearly 3 times the height of Everest. Olympus Mons formed over a hot spot, like the Hawaiian volcanoes, but because Mars has no plate tectonics, its crust is a single rigid shell. The volcano was never carried away from the hot spot. So it just kept growing, eruption after eruption, over billions of years, building to an extraordinary size. It is a mountain born of the same process as Hawaii's mountains, but on a planet that never moved. And so it grew and grew, patient and undisturbed, into something almost beyond imagination. The surface of Venus is covered in mountains and volcanic features, though they are very different from those on Earth. The Maxwell-Montes range on Venus rises to about 11 kilometers above the planet's mean surface level, slightly taller than Everest above Earth's sea level. Venus has no plate tectonics as we understand it on Earth, though there is evidence of significant volcanic activity. Its surface is young by planetary standards, mostly less than 1 billion years old, suggesting that Venus periodically undergoes massive volcanic resurfacing events that completely reshape its surface. The mountains of Venus exist in an extraordinary environment, surface temperatures of around 465 degrees Celsius, an atmospheric pressure 90 times that of Earth, and an atmosphere composed mostly of carbon dioxide with clouds of sulfuric acid. Venus's mountains are among the most inhospitable places in the solar system, beautiful and terrible in equal measure. The Moon has mountains too, and they are among the oldest landforms in the solar system. The lunar highlands, the bright, heavily cratered regions visible from Earth, are ancient mountain ranges formed when asteroids and meteorites bombarded the young Moon and melted its surface. When this material cooled, lighter minerals floated to the top and formed the highlands. The Moon's mountains are also shaped by craters, rings of raised terrain thrown up by impacting objects billions of years ago. The Leibniz Mountains near the Moon's south pole may rise to over 9,000 meters. The Moon has no atmosphere, no wind, no water, no volcanic activity today. Its mountains change only when a meteorite hits, an event that might happen once in 1 million years in any given spot. The lunar mountains are frozen in time, almost exactly as they were billions of years ago, a record of the violent early history of the solar system. Saturn's moon Titan has mountains made, in part, of water ice. Because Titan is so cold, its surface temperature is about minus 179 degrees Celsius. Water ice behaves like rock at Earth's surface temperatures. It is rigid and strong enough to build mountains. The Mithra Montes on Titan reach about 3,000 meters in height. Titan's landscape is, in some ways, eerily Earth-like. It has rivers, lakes, and rain. But all of these are made of liquid methane and ethane, not water. The rock is mostly water ice. The sand on its dunes may be made of organic molecules. It is a world that follows the same physical laws as Earth. mountains shaped by tectonics and erosion, but using entirely different materials. It is a reminder that the processes that build mountains on Earth are universal physical processes, playing out wherever the conditions allow, across the entire solar system. Io, one of Jupiter's moons, is the most volcanically active body in the solar system. Its surface is covered in active volcanoes, some of which erupt fountains of sulfur and sulfur dioxide hundreds of kilometers high. Io's volcanism is driven not by the decay of radioactive elements, as on Earth, but by tidal heating. The gravitational pull of Jupiter and the other large moons of Jupiter constantly flexes Io's interior, generating enormous amounts of heat. The mountains on Io, some of which reach up to 18 kilometers in height, are formed partly by tectonic processes and partly by the constant resurfacing from volcanic eruptions. Io's mountains are constantly being buried by volcanic deposits and then re-exposed by further tectonic activity. It is a world of continuous, restless geological activity, a mountain-building factory fueled by Jupiter's enormous gravity, always making and remaking its own surface. Pluto, despite being small and cold and far from the Sun, has mountains. The New Horizons spacecraft, which flew past Pluto in 2015, revealed a surprisingly varied and dynamic landscape, including mountain ranges up to about 3,500 meters tall, likely made of water ice. These mountains are thought to be geologically young, perhaps only 100 million years old, which is very recent by planetary standards. What drives geological activity on Pluto, so far from the Sun and with no large nearby planet to provide tidal heating, is not fully understood. There may be some radioactive heating from elements within Pluto's interior, or there may be processes involving the freezing and thawing of nitrogen ice on Pluto's surface that drive slow, gradual changes. Pluto surprised everyone who saw it. It was expected to be a dead, frozen world. Instead, it was strange and beautiful and geologically active, in its own quiet, icy way. The asteroid Vesta, one of the largest objects in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, has a mountain called Rhea Silvia, a central peak in a giant impact crater. This mountain is about 22 to 25 kilometers tall, one of the tallest known mountains in the solar system. It formed when a large asteroid impacted Vesta and excavated an enormous crater, with the central peak rising as material rebounded from the impact. The rebound process that creates central peaks in large craters is a fascinating geological phenomenon. The impact liquefies the rock briefly, and the rock bounces back up in slow motion, forming a peak. Vesta is a small world, only about 525 kilometers across, but it has been shaped by billions of years of impacts and geological processes. Its enormous mountain is a monument to one of the most violent impacts it ever experienced. Mountains on Earth exist in a very particular window of size. They are limited at the top by isostasy. The crust cannot support structures much taller than about 10 kilometers before the rock at the base begins to flow. And they are limited at the bottom by erosion. Mountains below a certain size are quickly worn away. On Mars, where there is no plate tectonics and gravity is lower, mountains can grow much larger, hence Olympus Mons. On very large planets with much stronger gravity, mountains would be smaller and flatter, because the stronger gravity would collapse them more quickly. There is a theoretical maximum mountain height for each planet, determined by the planet's gravity and the strength of its surface rock. Earth's mountains are approximately as tall as they can be. Everest is, in a very real sense, close to the tallest mountain that Earth's gravity will permit. The concept of a planetary surface is itself interesting when you think about mountains. On a small asteroid, a mountain might be larger than the entire body. Some asteroids are essentially just mountains floating in space. On very small bodies, the distinction between a mountain and the body itself becomes meaningless. Comets, which are small icy bodies, often have extremely irregular shapes, lumpy and strange, with hills and cliffs that might technically qualify as mountains. Some comets have cliffs several kilometers tall, formed by the collapse of material as ice evaporates from the comet's surface near the sun. The mountain, in the broadest sense, is simply a place where surface material has been piled up higher than the average. And this happens everywhere in the solar system, on every body with a surface, driven by gravity and heat and impact, and the patient, universal work of geological processes. There are mountains beneath the Earth's ocean that we have barely explored. The ocean covers about 71% of Earth's surface, and the ocean floor is one of the least explored environments on the planet. Thousands of seamounts, underwater mountains, dot the ocean floor. Many of them are taller than any mountain on land when measured from their base. They are islands of hard rock in the soft sediment of the deep ocean floor, and they create unique habitats. The hard rock surface of a seamount is colonized by cold water corals, sponges, sea stars, and hundreds of other species. The currents that flow around seamounts bring nutrients from the deep, creating very productive local ecosystems. These underwater mountains are, in their own quiet way, as biodiverse and interesting as any mountain range on land, but almost entirely beyond ordinary human experience, hidden beneath miles of cold, dark, silent water. Part 11, Winding Down, the Deeper Quiet. One of the most peaceful things about mountains is the way they make human concerns feel small. Not in a frightening or diminishing way, but in the way that looking at a very large, very ancient thing can release you, gently, from the weight of ordinary daily worries. The mountain has been here for millions of years. It will be here, in some form slowly changing, for millions more. Whatever you are carrying tonight, whatever is on your mind as you listen to these words, the mountain is patient with it. The mountain does not judge. The mountain simply is. It rose slowly from the collision of continents. It has been worn by rain and ice and the slow work of rivers. And it continues quietly to simply exist, as it has always done, and as it will do long after all of us are gone. There is a deep comfort in that kind of permanence. The word geology comes from the Greek words for earth and study. It is quite literally the study of the earth. And it is one of the few sciences where the primary timescale is not years or decades or centuries, but millions and billions of years. Geologists develop a particular relationship with time, a sense that the current moment is just one instant in an enormous, slow-moving story. They learn to see the landscape not as it is, but as a series of layers from different times, all present at once. A geologist looking at a mountain sees not just the rock in front of them, but the ancient sea floor it once was, the magma chamber it may have passed through, the glacier that shaped its current form, and the slow future erosion that will eventually level it. It is a way of seeing that is deeply calming, placing the present moment in a vast and patient context. There is a Japanese aesthetic concept called mono no aware, sometimes translated as the pathos of things or an empathy toward things. It describes a gentle, bittersweet awareness of the impermanence of all things, combined with a deep appreciation for their beauty precisely because they are temporary. Mountains seem like they should be the exception. They are so old, so large, so enduring. And yet, on the geological timescale, they are temporary. They rise and they erode. They are here, and then slowly, over millions of years, they are not. Every mountain you have ever seen or will ever see is on its way to becoming something else. Sediment in a river delta, rock on an ocean floor, eventually new rock in a new place, in a new form. The mountain is beautiful, and it is changing. And those two things are not separate. They are the same thing. The air in mountain environments often has a particular quality of clarity. With less dust, less pollution, and less water vapor than lowland air, mountain air scatters light differently, creating extraordinary visibility. On clear days in mountain regions, You can sometimes see mountain peaks hundreds of kilometers away, their distant forms barely distinguishable from clouds, hovering at the edge of visibility. This clarity also means that the night sky in mountain environments is particularly spectacular. High-altitude observatories are built in mountains for exactly this reason. The thin, dry air provides much better viewing conditions for telescopes than the thick, humid air of lowlands. The mountain lifts you just a little closer to the universe. Not enough to matter in physical terms, but enough to see it a little more clearly, with just a little less of the Earth's atmosphere between you and the stars. Mountains around the world have inspired music. The symphonies of Brahms, composed in part in the Alps. The alpine folk music of Switzerland and Austria. The yodel, developed as a way to communicate across mountain valleys. The haunting music of Andean flutes, made from wood and bone in the high mountain communities of South America. The mountain traditions of Central Asian singing. Music that reflects the vast, open, high-altitude landscapes of the steppe and the peaks. Music and mountains seem to belong together. Perhaps because both exist in time rather than in space, both unfold slowly, both reward patience and attention, both contain a quality of something larger than the individual moment. The mountain does not play music, but the people who live in and among mountains have always made music that sounds like mountains, broad, slow, open, patient. The highest permanent human settlement on Earth is generally considered to be La Rinconada in Peru, a gold mining town sitting at about 5,100 meters above sea level in the Andes. The people who live there, several thousand of them, experience the thin air every day. The low oxygen levels mean that physical exertion is difficult, and new arrivals typically suffer from altitude sickness until they acclimatize over days or weeks. The temperature is cold year-round, and the settlement sits at the edge of a glacier. Living permanently at such an altitude requires genuine physiological adaptation. Many long-term residents have higher than average red blood cell counts, allowing their blood to carry more oxygen. Life at La Rinconada is genuinely hard and genuinely high, a reminder that human beings will settle almost anywhere, adapting to the mountain on the mountain's own terms. There is a practice called landscape meditation that has been part of many human traditions. The practice of finding stillness and perspective by sitting quietly in a large, open landscape. Mountains have been particular sites of this kind of practice. In the Zen Buddhist tradition, mountains are symbols of stillness, of the unchanging nature of reality beneath the surface appearance of change. The great Zen master Dogen wrote, "Mountains and rivers, the whole earth, the full moon, the full stars, none of these come from outside." He was pointing to the intimate relationship between the observer and the observed, between the mind that perceives the mountain and the mountain itself. These ideas are not scientific, but they are not unrelated to science either. The mountain's patience, its endurance, its quiet existence across vast stretches of time. These are real facts, and they have a real effect on how we feel when we stand before one. The concept of deep time, geologist John McPhee's phrase for the vast expanses of geological time, is one of the most mind-expanding ideas in all of human knowledge. When you truly try to hold in your mind the idea that the Appalachian Mountains are over 300 million years old, that they were already ancient when the dinosaurs first appeared, something shifts in how you perceive the world. The ordinary human time frame, years, decades, a human lifetime, falls away, and you get a glimpse of a much larger process. This is not a frightening perspective. It is, if anything, deeply restful. Your own concerns and preoccupations, however real and pressing they feel, become small and gentle when held against the backdrop of millions of years. The mountain does not hurry. It does not worry. It simply endures quietly and without effort. And in its endurance, it offers something rare, a reminder that not everything is urgent. Every piece of rock in a mountain was once something else. Perhaps it was sediment on the floor of a sea, made from the shells of tiny creatures. Perhaps it was magma, rising from the deep earth in a volcanic eruption. Perhaps it was the remains of an older mountain, eroded and washed downstream and compressed again. The same atoms that are in the rock of a Himalayan summit may have been, at different times, in the ocean floor, in a prehistoric reef, in the body of a creature that lived before the dinosaurs, in a river delta on a continent that no longer exists. Atoms are not born and do not die. They simply move between forms, cycling through rock and water and air and living things across billions of years. The mountain is made of borrowed material, and the material will be borrowed again. Everything is on its way to becoming something else. There is a mineral called kyanite that forms in specific conditions, high pressure but moderate temperature, deep within mountain roots during intense metamorphism. It is often a beautiful blue color, and its crystals are long and blade-like. Kyanite is notable among minerals because its hardness varies with direction. It is harder in one direction than another. This anisotropy, this directional variation in properties, is a record of the alignment of the mineral's crystal structure with the stress field it experienced when it grew. Every crystal of kyanite is a tiny compass pointing in the direction of the greatest compressive stress when it formed, deep in the root of an ancient mountain millions of years ago. Even in the smallest things, the mountain leaves its mark. Even in a single crystal, the memory of enormous forces is quietly preserved. Mountains play a significant role in the global carbon cycle. Weathering, the chemical breakdown of rock by water and carbon dioxide, removes carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and locks it into carbonate minerals. This process is faster in mountain regions, where erosion exposes fresh rock and rainwater flows quickly over it. The Himalayas, because of their enormous size and the heavy monsoon rainfall they receive, are thought to have had a significant effect on Earth's climate over the past 50 million years. Their rapid weathering drawing down atmospheric carbon dioxide and contributing to global cooling. The link between mountain building, weathering, and climate is complex and still being researched, but it is clear that mountains are not just passive features of the landscape. They are active participants in the regulation of Earth's climate, very slowly, very quietly, removing carbon from the air and storing it in rock. In the winter, mountain snowpacks store an enormous amount of water. This water is gradually released through spring and summer as the snow melts, providing a steady supply to rivers and streams. In many parts of the world, the western United States, Central Asia, the Andes, mountain snowpack is a critical water resource, sustaining agriculture, cities, and ecosystems through the dry summer months. The timing and amount of snowmelt is influenced by temperature, and warmer winters mean less snowpack and earlier melting, with the peak river flow shifting to earlier in the year, before the driest months when water is most needed. This shift in the timing of snowmelt is one of the ways that climate change is affecting water availability in mountain-dependent regions. The mountain is a slow but faithful banker of water, and changes in how it stores and releases that water have far-reaching consequences for the people and landscapes downstream. Fossils found in mountain rocks have been crucial in understanding the history of life on Earth. Because mountain building folds and uplifts sedimentary rock layers, it exposes fossils that would otherwise remain deeply buried. The Burgess Shale in the Canadian Rockies, for example, is one of the most important fossil sites in the world. A remarkable deposit of soft-bodied creatures from the Cambrian period, about 505 million years ago. These creatures represent some of the earliest complex animals on Earth, and they are preserved in extraordinary detail in the shale because they were buried quickly and deeply in quiet, low-oxygen sediment. Without the uplift of the Rockies bringing these rocks to the surface, these extraordinary records of early life would never have been found. Mountains, in their slow upward journey, bring the past to light. There are mountains in Antarctica, enormous ranges hidden beneath the ice sheet. The Transantarctic Mountains, Mountains, extending about 3,500 kilometers, are one of the longest mountain ranges on Earth, separating East Antarctica from West Antarctica. They reach heights of over 4,500 meters in places. Beneath the Antarctic ice sheet, buried under kilometers of ice, are other mountain ranges and valleys, including what may be the largest canyon on Earth, the Gamburtsev Mountains, whose peaks reach about 3,000 meters but are completely covered by ice and invisible from the surface. These hidden mountains were discovered using ice-penetrating radar surveys. They exist in complete darkness and silence, buried beneath the ice, visited by no living thing. They are perhaps the most remote and inaccessible mountains on Earth, present real, ancient, and entirely hidden. The sound of wind through mountain passes and valleys has a quality unlike any other wind sound. It may be the absence of other sounds, the quietness of the high mountain environment, that makes the wind so noticeable. Or it may be the particular frequencies that the narrow valleys and rocky slopes produce. Different mountain passes have different wind sounds. Some howl, some whisper, some produce a low, constant roar. In some mountain traditions, the wind is considered a voice, the voice of the mountain, or of something beyond the mountain. Whether or not we share that belief, there is something about the sound of mountain wind that communicates a sense of great space, of emptiness, of something vast moving through something even vaster. It is a sound that can quiet the mind almost as effectively as complete silence. Part 12, Gently Slowing Down. The highest road in the world is the Marsamik La Pass Road in the Ladakh region of India, reaching about 5,582 meters above sea level. High mountain roads like this one are remarkable achievements of engineering and human determination, crossing passes that were once accessible only on foot or by yak. And yet even on these roads, the mountain is always in control. Rock falls, snowslides, seasonal closures. The mountain permits passage for much of the year, but it does not surrender its character. The roads cling to the mountain sides like thin threads. The mountain tolerates them, for now, in the way that something ancient and enormous tolerates something small and recent. Gently, without hostility, but without any real accommodation either. The mountain simply is, and the road does what it can. There is a concept in earth science called the hydrological cycle, the continuous movement of water between the ocean, the atmosphere, and the land. Mountains are a crucial part of this cycle. Water evaporates from the ocean, rises as water vapor, forms clouds, is carried inland by winds, rises over mountains, condenses, falls as rain or snow, flows down rivers and glaciers, and eventually returns to the ocean. Every drop of rain that falls on a mountain has recently been part of the ocean, and every drop that flows away from the mountain is on its way back to the ocean, through rivers and groundwater and the slow seepage through rock. The mountain is a way station in this endless journey of water, a place where the water pauses briefly in the form of snow and ice and glaciers before moving on. The water is always going somewhere. The mountain simply slows it down a little for a while. When geologists find a mountain that has been deeply eroded, worn down to its very roots, they sometimes find rocks called mylonites. Mylonites are rocks that have been sheared and ground along fault zones deep in the crust, where rock moves past rock under enormous pressure. They have a fine-grained, streaky texture that records the direction of movement. Finding mylonites tells geologists exactly where the ancient fault zones of the mountain were, where the blocks of crust ground past each other, deep in the dark, under unimaginable pressure, over millions of years. These rocks are like the fingerprints of an ancient mountain, records of its deepest, most hidden processes, exposed at the surface only after hundreds of millions of years of slow, patient erosion have removed everything above them. The mountain, even in its absence, leaves traces. There is a quiet pleasure in simply looking at a map of a mountain range, following the curves and lines of the contours, imagining the valleys and ridges they represent. The great mountain ranges of the world, the Himalayas, the Andes, the Alps, the Rockies, the Atlas, the Urals, each have their own character when seen from above. Some are straight and parallel, folded into neat ridges and valleys. Others are more complex and irregular, reflecting a more complicated geological history of multiple collisions and eruptions. The contour lines on a topographic map are like a musical score. They represent a landscape that has to be interpreted and imagined before it becomes real. And when you do imagine it, when you let the contour lines resolve into a three-dimensional world of slopes and peaks and valleys, it is a beautiful kind of thinking. The map becomes a mountain. The numbers become a landscape. The lines become a world. And finally, perhaps the most quietly remarkable fact of all, you are made of the same atoms as a mountain. The calcium in your bones was formed in a star that exploded before our solar system was born, just as the silicon in mountain granite was. The iron in your blood shares its origin with the iron in the Earth's core. The oxygen you breathe, right now slowly and gently, was produced by plants and photosynthetic microbes over billions of years. The same oxygen that weathers mountain rock and carries it slowly away. You and the mountain are made of the same ancient material. You are both, in a very literal sense, made of stardust, atoms forged in stellar furnaces, scattered across space, gathered by gravity into a planet, cycled through rock and ocean and air and life for billions of years. The mountain is your quiet, ancient cousin. And when you rest tonight, you share with it that one great gift, the ability to simply be for a while without doing anything at all. Closing, fading into Esved, and so. Here we are, at the end of our long, gentle journey through the world of mountains that we have traveled very slowly, from the deep interior of the Earth to the highest peaks in the solar system. From the first stirring of tectonic plates 3 billion years ago to the tiny millimeter by which the Himalayas rise this year, from the roots of ancient mountains buried beneath old continents, to the quiet blue eyes of cirque lakes reflecting the sky that we have spoken of, glaciers and granite, and the slow folding of rock under pressure, and the patient erosion of rain and ice, and the creatures that make their homes in thin, cold air, and the water that gathers on mountain slopes and travels to the sea that we have perhaps visited a few mountains that no human being has ever stood on. The hidden mountains of Antarctica, the ice mountains of distant moons, the strange peaks of asteroids drifting quietly through the solar system. And we can take a moment to notice how very large and how very quiet all of this is. The mountain does not need to be anywhere else. It does not need to be different from what it is. It rose slowly over millions of years. It is being worn away slowly over millions more. And in between, it simply exists. Vast, patient, still. Slowly, gently, your body perhaps has been growing heavier as we traveled tonight. Your breathing perhaps has been deepening. The words perhaps have begun to blur just a little at the edges, their meaning arriving more slowly, more softly, less urgently. That is exactly right. There is no need to rush. The mountain will be there tomorrow. The plates will still be moving. The glaciers, in their slow way, will still be flowing. The snowflakes will still be forming in their perfect, temporary, six-sided symmetry, falling gently onto peaks that were once the floor of ancient oceans. All of this will continue quietly while you sleep. The earth is patient. The rock is patient. The deep time of geology is patient. And you can be patient too. You can let go tonight of any sense of urgency. You can let the weight of the day settle like sediment slowly drifting to the floor of a still, deep lake. And we can take a moment to notice how comfortable it feels to simply rest. The mountains were built slowly. The glaciers move slowly. The continents drift slowly. And sleep comes slowly, gently, in its own time. You have done enough tonight. You have thought enough and listened enough, and now it is time for the most natural thing of all, the quiet disappearance into sleep. Let the mountains hold you tonight. Let the deep, patient rock of the earth support you. Slowly, gently. There is no need to rush. everything is well. Everything is quiet. The mountain is there in its patient, ancient way. And you are here, resting, as you were always meant to. Good night. And if you found something peaceful here tonight, a gentle like, or a quiet subscribe, would mean a great deal. No rush, no pressure. Just whenever you wake up, rest well.